I just wanted to fight because England was pretty near at the dangerous level of going under. Germany was sweeping everything before them, and so that's why I went. My father was a true British. He came out as a 19-year-old, and he was true British, and of course he brought us up that way. So everything British, that was our duty. That's why I went. And I think most of us, that's why we went. We couldn't get there quick enough to help. We didn't think we'd get killed, we just wanted to help. There we departed then on a ship, small ship, as civilians. We had to be signed on, 23 of us signed on, and we were sent then on the way through the Pacific to Panama Canal and then to New York. We stayed at New York 10 days because we'd hit a whale on the way, and for repairs. And then we went from there. We went in a convoy of about 40 small ships and big ships on the way all the way up the coast, past Newfoundland to Iceland, and then back down to Glasgow. But we lose a ship nearly every night. Usually the subs it would be a line of 7 of us, and the last ship usually got picked off nearly every night. Not every night, but we lost many on the way. So we had to go then only as fast as the slowest, and that was about 10 knots an hour, so which was pretty slow. We only had 2 little corvettes as escorts, and that was pretty hard. If one ship was sunk, nobody stopped. They kept going, and you were left at the mercy, because if they stopped, then the submarines would have got into the rest of the thing. So the corvettes just went up and down each row all the time, supporting us. Going up the coast of America, America then had lights on the cities, and of course the submarines used to pick off ships, and you would see just the masts of them as you were going along on the coast till you got wide away. But yes, we always wondered whether we'd get caught, but of course we were lucky we didn't get. We got to Glasgow in the end safely. Going over, of course, as the 23 of us, we all manned the guns. They had Oerlikons, and they had a 4-inch gun at the rear, and about 5 of them were trained to work on that, and all of us had to take duty on the Oerlikons day and night, whenever our turn was. Not that we would have been much good, because the Oerlikons were from the First World War. When we were there, my navigator, he came to me and he said, "Would you like to be with us?" He'd crewed up with a pilot, and they just asked me, and that's how each one asked somebody in there. That's how we crewed up. Just got together, more or less. Well, my pilot was from Western Australia. My navigator was from Western Australia. My bomb aimer was from New South Wales, from Sydney, and the engineer and the engineer, he was from England, and the rear gunner was from England, and the mid-upper gunner was from South Africa. So we're a mixed crew. We had a marvellous crew. They were all good. The pilot was good. Yes, they were all very good, yes. The bomb aimer he lay down in the front, in the nose. The pilot and the engineer were at controls. Next to them was the navigator. Next to him was myself, about halfway down the aircraft. Just above me was the mid-upper gunner, and then the tail gunner was down in the end of the aircraft. When we were on Wellingtons, I controlled the heater, and of course I'd control it for myself and the others would be freezing, so the heater was right beside me, but I'd cook if they'd say turn it up, but I'd cook if I turned it up, so I controlled the heater there, yes.
But
But
not in
in
the
the
Lancaster.
Lancaster, I controlled the heat, but it did everybody much the same. We used to go to briefing before we set off, and they'd unveil the map, a huge map the size of this wall here, and the flight lieutenant who was in charge would then tell us where we were going, and we never fly straight to the target. We always flew, zigzags to try and fool them into where we were going. So that was our. Of course, towards the end, we were going to Berlin often, and that was where our hearts used to sink as soon as we saw Berlin, because we knew the losses were so heavy that the cards were on the table that we wouldn't get through. Those days, you just accepted it. You didn't query it. You thought, well, this could be the last trip because you're losing friends all the time. And you knew that the cards were there, especially going to Berlin. Berlin was about 30 miles across with searchlights, just like daylight. And you used to see the aircraft going down all the time. We'd lose 40 a night, 40 crews a night, and you'd see the plane going down and then a huge explosion. So we knew the odds were. We'd been shot up before, but we'd always managed to get away and come back. But we knew the odds were bad. We were the senior crew on the squadron, and this was my 15th operation. So you could see we had nobody got through a tour while those years. Now, a tour could be 28 or 30, depends on how how difficult the targets were. The casualties on 460 were shocking. Good men. And when I was there, my navigator became a doctor, and a lot of them were far better educated than me, and they were valuable people lost. See, I wasn't very valuable because I was only just a labourer, but they were valuable. We lost some marvellous men there. To me, it was a shame. Two of my friends asked me to get in touch with their families, if they were shot down, but I was shot down the same time as them, so it wasn't until I got back to Australia that I could do that. But they, like me, they knew it was on for any one of us. I was shot down on the December the 2nd, 1943. That was the big blitz on Berlin at that stage. Churchill was hoping to bomb them in submission, that was the idea. Night after night, aircraft attacked Berlin, and this was our fourth attempt on that trip to go to Berlin. Well, we were over the target, and we just dropped the bombs, and the bomb doors are huge, of course, and they're open. They take quite a while to open, and we dropped our bombs, and then straight away we were attacked by a Focke-Wulf and a Messerschmitt, and we couldn't manoeuvre because you must stay dead level while you're bombing, and of course the bomb doors take a fair while to close. They're huge doors. They take a long, and the pilot's got to fly steady because the wind resistance with those and that was our fatal. If we'd got further away, we might have had a chance, but we had no chance. We're sitting ducks, and they just came at us, and they shot the two engines out. The mid-upper gunner, who was just above me, they copped him and the two engines and caught fire badly, and the flames. And then the pilot gave the order to bail out. And of course, we all bailed out, all but him. Unfortunately, he never got out. Well, the pilot held the plane even though it was burning, he tried to weave because the fighters were still coming at us, and I was directing the operations from up above because the mid-upper gunner who usually does that, he was killed. So, and he kept weaving backwards and forwards, and we got rid of the fighters because they must have thought we were gone anyway, and then he gave the order to bail out because he couldn't hold the plane much longer. It was so burning so fiercely, and of course didn't take us much long to decide to get out because we knew it was going to blow up if we didn't. So and they go, the pilot, the navigator, bomb aimer, engineer, all go out the front. Myself and the rear gunner and the mid-upper gunner, we go out the back. So when I got down to the back, by then the rear gunner had opened the door, but of course the flames were so bad he didn't want to jump. But I didn't hesitate. I jumped through the flames and he must have followed. But we did get burnt a bit across the face, but we saved our lives. We never thought you'd be bailed out. We never did any training on parachute. We just jumped and hoped for the best. We never considered that. And I don't think Bomber Command had considered it. They thought the plane would go down and that would be the end of it. Well, as I fell from a fair way because we bailed out fairly high, and I thought, looking down, I thought I'm going to fall in the lake. And I thought, gee whiz, how am I going to swim to the edge? Anyway, I was daydreaming here. I could hear the planes going back. And your heart sank a bit, of course, naturally hearing them going. And then bang, I hit the ground, and it was snow, all snow. I hit the snow, and fortunately I was relaxed, so I didn't get hurt. So I was lucky, really. So then I tried to bury the parachute, but it was too hard, the ground, so I had to just push it in a hole and leave it there. And then I could see the lights of a car picking up some of the other crew, I guess, so I made haste and got away that way. I escaped for 3 days. Third day I got picked up, yes. Then I was taken to Berlin because they don't know what you are at that time. You could be a spy, you could be anything. They took me to Berlin and interrogated me there. And then from Berlin, after they were satisfied, they sent me down south to Frankfurt on Main, where the Jugendluft, that was a special interrogation centre, and I was there with the navigator. I didn't know he was there, of course, for 21 days, where they put you through the mill. First of all, the Red Cross officer comes and wants to know all the particulars, and you just give him the bare essentials, and then you get a nice chap come and try and ask which squadron you're on and all the particulars. Then you get a fierce one who threatens you all sorts of things, and this goes on for 21 days. And about towards the end, they came into me and took me out in the middle of the night and lined me up against a brick wall like these two Indonesians, and they had the 4 men with rifles, and I thought to myself, this is it, nobody will know I'm here. And of course, you almost cried by that stage. I was so downhearted. But anyway, I stood there, I didn't say anything. And after a while, they took me back to the cell. Well, I was about 20 then, yes. It was pretty well organised in the prison camp. We had all sorts of people, and some of them put on concert parties. Some we had sports equipment from the Red Cross and things like that. And I joined the escape organisation. First of all, I tried to escape with my navigator, but we didn't get far. We got caught. And then I joined the escape organisation, so I worked with them. And they had some very clever men running that. They had forged passports and all sorts of things to help. And I was only a junior then, and my job was to help get people out of the camp, and they did that by many ways. There was one way they would line up workers. See, the army chaps had to work. They'd line up at the 2 gates and the Germans would count them. the moment they moved off, one chap would be waiting there, or two, they'd slip in with the ranks and go out. So they got out quite a few that way. Another way I was on was we had to go for our Red Cross parcels and that on the outer perimeter between another fence, and push this wagon, the old wagons they had, and one chap would have cutters, for cutting the wire, and we'd make out the thing was broken down, and his job was to cut the wire, and then two of the chaps who were dressed as Frenchmen, the workers, they'd quickly get out as the guards would walk the opposite way, and they got out quite a lot of chaps that way. I worked in a tunnel, and we worked for weeks on this tunnel, and it was about 6 feet deep underneath. We had a chap who used to sit at the top, and we all had to supply bedboards to store it up, and also somebody had pinched electric light bulbs and light, and they connected that up. We had lights along. We had two miners from Wales who could mine, and somebody then, as it got further and further, the oxygen became difficult to get, so somebody had a kit bag, they made it into bellows, and they pinched a hose out of the Germans' garden, and they pumped air to the front, and our job all along was to pull the dirt back, 7 of us, and pile it underneath this hut we were in, until one day the Germans discovered something was going on, and fortunately for me, there were 7 of us in the thing, and the chap at our scout at the beginning warned us just in time, and we all slid out the other side where they were poking with crowbars to see how far the earth was. So we got out that way, otherwise we would have been in real trouble. So I might have done another, that's 2 lots of 21 days undone, so things might have been serious if I'd been caught again. The big push in Arnhem Land, when that happened, that sent our spirits a bit low, and then it seemed a long time to us after that before we were finally released by the Russians. The night before we could see the fighting in the distance and the Germans during the night of course disappeared, and the Russians then came through, first of all the Cossacks on horseback with just a gun, no saddle. They were the first wave. They came through, then another lot with the tanks and armours and so forth. But they left us more or less to ourselves, so we had to then go out and roam for a month looking for food and finding food. And we'd come across many times 2 Germans holed up in a big shed, and the Russians would be surrounding him, and the Germans had killed quite a few Russians before they'd be murdered, but they hated each other that much. It was a pleasure to kill each other. We didn't know what hate was till we knew with them. But then all towards the end of that, the Russians rounded all of us up, put us in a camp in a place called Riesa, and 5 of us decided something was fishy, so we cut a hole in the fence. We're pretty expert at that, and cut a hole in the fence and made our way back to the American lines. So that was how we were liberated. And we were taken to a place called Halle, which was the American hospital centre, and we couldn't believe the white bread and things like that, because we never had seen anything like that for a long time. So they built us up for a while, and then we were flown to Brussels, and then from Brussels we spent the night there, and the English flew us back to England.